Once upon a time, in the near dark and darker forest, there lived two kinds of kids. The brother was named Hazel. The sister was named Gracie. They lived with their father was to be good at cutting sticks. When the kids were small such as normal, the father had plenty of work to do, and there was always food in the fridge. Sadly, the mother had died earlier because being murdered by a black killer in K. Jordan, and they also had a new stepmother Hazel who was being cruel, greedy, and nasty. What the crap are you doing, playing all of the silly games again? You didn't know you'd play stupid games. Now go and make yourself full. Go and cut some wood. And you the kids, go to bed. You're just a nonsense, shouted the stepmother Hazel. Hazel and Gracie wasn't at a supper. Supper? There's no food in the house. Do as I say, go to bed. If I know what's be good for you. And you haven't sold any wood for weeks. Your horrible kids are eating out home. But the father pleaded and pleaded with his Hazel, but she was very persuaded. Her mind was been made out. She ranted so much, he gave him agreed to make his wish. If they stay with me, we won't starve for us. Then take them into the woods tomorrow, and please make sure you come back us alone, replied stepmother Hazel. Hazel and Gracie overheard what was being said. Hazel has a clever plan, and he opened his bedroom window and climbed out and spot into the light. He filled his pockets with the small stones and crept back to his room. The next morning, stepmother Hazel has a heavy heart. The father took Hazel and Gracie to the edge of the woods. These animals saw two kids walking the woods. I wonder where those three kids are going off to, said the rabbit. This must be going into the woods for a picnic, said the snowshoer. I bet there's some animals in there. Didn't they all look like a country code? The country code is, the witch SpongeBob plans to hear an earlier fire learned on the gingerbread house, explained the mouse. Don't go in with you. Deeper and deeper in the woods they went. Every often, Hazel dropped one of some stones on the ground to leave a trail. Eventually, they're sitting down to rest. Hazel and Gracie are tired and they falling asleep. The father crept silently and creeps away. As the woodcutter planned, a new been cut by a stick with his hand, and he escaped home safely. At the night time, Hazel and Gracie started to wake up, and started to unhappy. We're all alone. We will never find a way home, cried Gracie. They followed the trail of stones until at last they reached home safely. The father was so happy to see him again, and the stepmother Hazel, as witch Hazel, was very furious. The hell are you doing back there? I have already sent out of your room. You'll have to sleep in the barn, and in the morning, you will go back into the woods to seek your fortune. Let's hope if a big bad wolf or a bad bear has meeting you up for dinner time. You wretched kiddies, sweared strongly stepmother Hazel, and sent off kids to the barn. Stepmother Hazel locked Hazel and Gracie in the barn. It was very dark and noisy. Birds toot out in a distance. There is no lighting. Insects buzzing in the rafters. Spiders spinning webs in the corners. The whistling trees are sadly. An owl tooted on his car nearby. Hazel and Gracie was cold and hungry and they couldn't sleep. Suddenly, Hazel and Gracie heard a strange tinkling sound and saw a tiny light. It was some fairies carrying light lanterns. Oh, what have we here, two kiddies? What are you doing in the barn? Explained the fairy. And after all, it's my birthday and I decided to came here for my party. And she sings happy birthday, and doing a dancing jig. And after the party, Hazel and Gracie fell asleep earlier. In the morning, the father and the stepmother Hazel woke them up. Wake up you lazy lancers. We're all now going to the woods for a nice picnic. Make sure we'll truly get lost this time, tell her stepmother Hazel. They went down to the woods. So often, Hazel dropped a piece of bread. They followed the trail back home. But they didn't notice that some of those pigeons were following them. The witch who has named NK which is an evil little kid wants to unavail of them. Two hunters came and Gracie thinks is the way home. But how can we swim across? Said Hazel. Hey, why don't you just go swimming across the water? Said Gracie. It's too deep to swim, said the hunter. Why don't you just wade across? Said Hazel. But how we can wait here? Said Gracie. It can't wait here, they need a boat. The boat needs to swim here and but some animals will disappear, replied the hunter. But he rent Hazel and Gracie his boat, and they crossed the river. The two kids were still trying to find the way home. They're very hungry and very tired. They were still seriously lost. Whilst Hazel and Gracie went to see the bright sparkly. The mouths watered. The walls is made of gingerbread. They tasted it. The roof was made of chocolate. Even flowers were made of lollipops. Hazel and Gracie had a feast. NK which came. But the NK which used a spell to lock two kids in a corner of right prison. It was just there was being unavailable through Jordan's crew. Hazel and Gracie felt around, but there is no escape. Every day, NK which eats them lots of candies, cream cakes, and cheeseburgers. One day, the rabbit crept out while NK which wasn't looking at it. NK which been site member. She inspected two kids each day to see if they're too fat to cook. Crap, that's just skin and bone. Tonight, it will be making boy burgers with toenail sauce for tea. Let's get the oven ready. NK which's oven door is being stuck. Gracie what did she was be told. As soon as NK which opened the oven door, Gracie gave NK which a big push onto her head and shoulders were stuck in fast. In a big rage, she was burning up and ran out the house with the oven on NK which's head. So Hazel and Gracie ran into the garden and bumped into the rabbit's back. But she made an earlier accident. Time to go home boys and girls, but take this. It's made of bag of gold when the witch is burning hole in a garden. But I dunging up for you. Now run home. Quickly asked the rabbit. Hazel and Gracie pops the hole onto the ground, and ran home away. My poor kitties. How I wish they would come home safe and sound. But stepmother Hazel, also known as Jordan, has had to be dead by now. I never see my two kids again, said the father, and fallen to the tears of father's eye, and Wilby was crying. Hazel and Gracie back home. They will ever loved the father and his own truth of gold. Father gave them out of a surprise. That's the end of our story. The stepmother Hazel had died and now they lived happily ever after. They had NK the witch's gold and now they were rich. There always still food on the fridge, and the father never had to cut the fire sticks. The creatures and animals gathered around the happy fairy tale. The end.